The next part of this whole object-based approach is fields. Fields are containers that enable you to add structured data or additional information to your nodes in Tana, as opposed to just having it in the outline. And this allows you to organize your information, enrich your nodes, or manage your data, or manage metadata too. They can be used anywhere, but are especially powerful when configured in super tags. And I'll show you what that looks like now. So how to add fields. Let's jump over to the logistics optimization project. So I've added that super tag to this node, and I see there that I now have these fields which come up, but I want to be able to configure it. And the way that I do that is if I Control-Shift-click on that project, I get this configuration menu for super tags. And we'll look at this in a bit more detail. The other option is to go to that project tag over there, and then to say on the 3-button menu over here, configure super tag. It's just quicker to Control-Shift-click. And the way that I add a field is using the greater than sign. So Shift period basically gets me that greater than sign, and that adds this option for a field. And one of the fields that I like to use for my projects is overview. So if I say overview over here, that will mean that every single tag or every single object or instance of this super tag will get that field. So let me go back to my logistics optimization project, and there we go. I have that overview field over there. So now what I might want to do is to move these points over here into that field. So I can just drag and drop them, or I could cut and paste them, and that is an easy way to configure information. Now the other way is if I go to the super tag page, and I'll explain a bit more about the super tag page later, but just to get this in the intro, if I say add view over here, I can add a table view, and that gives me a nice table of all my projects. And then I can say add field, add new field, and I can say company or something like that. Okay, so I could then, in this table even over here, I could say mining co. Okay, so that's a super simple way to enter fields. And something which I want to call out here is it's helpful to reuse your fields as much as possible. So if you have an existing field in Tana, use that again. Although don't worry if you get this wrong, because you can merge them later down the line. Don't worry. So the example I have here is if I have an author field in my book super tag, it's best to use that same author field in my articles super tag, even though I like to use producer because that's more generic. The side note that I have here is why I prefer to use fields rather than bullets. For me, that's where the power comes in. The relationships can be very well defined in your fields, and I'll look at that when we go deeper into fields, but also so that I can hide them. So if I go back up a level here, you'll see that these are all hidden fields over here. So I can decide if I want to show or hide them. However, if I go and let me just quickly go to my other demo here, if I say, or let me add a node here, additional information. And then if I navigate back to this node over here, that additional node will always appear here. Whereas if I made this, for instance, additional information, I could configure the settings if I click into that field over there, and I could hide the field a number of different ways, but let me say when empty. So now if I go navigate back and then actually navigate forward there, I can see that that additional information field is now not shown. A quick thing to add here, it comes later in the lesson, but you can see here that I have one menu for my super tags and another menu for fields. This was something that tripped me up when I got started, but just helpful to call that out. So I've moved that point over there a little bit up. And I now want to get into the value of fields, and that's building semantic relationships. And don't worry too much about the definitions of the words. It's big words, but they have very simple meanings. So fields use the semantic triple format, where subject, predicate, object defines a relationship between the different entities. Now the relationships build connections more effectively through your workspace because it's structured, and it's also not just in a bullet point. The subject is a node to which the field is added. So let me open this information up over here. I have two example entries over here, John and Kimmy. Now, I've added the super tag friend demo, and in this super tag, there are 3 different fields: the location, the birthday, and the email address. And these are the predicates. So John and Kimmy are the subjects, and the predicate is the location, the birthday, and the email address. And the object is Australia, the date, and the email address. So John is in location, Australia. Kimmy is in location, England. That's that subject predicate object benefits. A good reference model for this is thinking about this as like a table or grid of information. And you saw when I went to the super tag page that that is one of the options that I have available to me. This is very familiar from a spreadsheet paradigm. And if I open that super tag up over here, you can see there that table which gives me the subject, predicate, and object and the different relationships. This becomes super powerful down the line. So just some last points here: visual cues to differentiate fields and super tags. I've adopted this preference for myself, which is lowercase for super tags and uppercase for fields. That just helps me to understand what is what and where I'm entering information. The last thing which I wanted to mention, which I actually mentioned earlier, is that I can add fields anywhere. So in this node over here, I can say greater than sign, and let me say relates to, which is one of my favorite fields. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later because I think it's super powerful. Just a point over here, this field is related to that node over there. So with a super tag, it's very easy to define. That's why I say, I'm just mentioning this as an edge case. It's not a typical way of working, but it might be helpful for you at some points in the future. Another note to add here is that the lowercase and uppercase thing is really my own personal preference. Depending on when you start using Tana, you might even see that they have used uppercase for their standard super tags. So don't hold on to the fact that this is lowercase and something's broken. It will still work exactly the same. Speaking to that whole platform approach, which I mentioned in the last video, the fields become containers or targets for information in your workflows. Now, this is a more advanced use case and just sort of letting the imagination go for those people who are thinking to where Tana might go in the future. But for now, let's just keep it simple and go back to the final part of this excerpt.